Okay, Hemanth, thank you very much for joining me today. It's great having you guys here, sit with a cigar, have a chat. And I'm actually going to start, Rocky. There are all kinds of stories. We've all read the history. But I want to know where the legend comes from. What's the actual Rocky Patel story? What made you decide to start making cigars?
So the story goes, I was living in Los Angeles. I was an attorney there practicing law. I went to law school there. And then I was at the Grand Habano room, spending time there smoking cigars. I was working in the entertainment industry with a lot of different celebrities. We were always on the set, waiting for lighting, sound, makeup, 2-3 hours to kill. They started smoking cigars, so I started smoking cigars. And then the private cigar lounge opened up in the Beverly Hills called Grand Habano Room right next to my office. And we'd go there after work, became one of the initial founding members. Pretty soon, many celebrities like, Schwarzenegger, Mel Gibson, Bruce Willis, Demi Moore, on and on, they all joined. And we'd just go there after work and chat and have a drink, and then people mind their own business. And after several years, somebody approached me who was the son of one of the members who'd started a cigar company called Indian Tabac, based on Indian Motorcycle Company. And he had a license, supposedly had a license from Indian Motorcycle Company. Anyway, I thought it was a fun project. I invested money. I kept writing checks and not getting anything back, and let this kid run wild down in Honduras, do his thing. And finally, when I held his feet to the fire, I saw that there was really not much going to materialize out of this company, so I took it over. And everyone said, forget it, you'll never get your money back, just move on, keep practicing law. And then I got my antlers up, and when somebody tells me I can't do something, I've got to make sure that I can conquer it. So typically it's a business that's handed down from generation to generation. You look at the Fuente family, the Padron family, many historic families. So here I was, totally out of my skin in something that everyone said was impossible to do and conquer. And it was very difficult at the beginning, to get the right tobaccos, to get the right materials. People had long-standing relationships with the certain farmers. And I spent a lot of time going to Dominican, Nicaragua, Honduras, asking questions, learning, watching, working in the farms and the curing and the fermentation. And I knew I had a good palate because I love to cook and I enjoy fine whiskeys and fine wine. So my palate was something that, I felt very confident about, but certainly I didn't have the art and homework of knowing how to cure tobacco, ferment tobacco, age tobacco. So that's the short version.
And has the journey worked out? Rocky Patel is certainly a cigar that everyone recognizes as a brand, high ratings, both amongst consumers and with the magazines and the reviewers. But is it a business, or is it still the hobby that you thought it was going to be all those years ago?
Well, it's turned into a significant business. It was a hobby at the beginning, and then once I finally had a lot of money and time at stake, I took it quite seriously. In the back of my mind, I was driven. I wanted to make one of the best cigars in the world. I wasn't in it just to play around in the business. I wanted to gain respect from my peers, which was the most important thing, from the consumers. And so it's been a challenge. It's been a long journey, but I think we've finally gotten to that point, where the Padrones and the Carlito Fuentes and the Plasencias and, those families respect me. I mean, they look at me as one of their own. I think I've gotten a lot of respect from most of my competitors because of fighting for the freedoms and rights of protecting the interest to smoke cigars, lawsuits against the FDA, lobbying Congress in Washington, D.C. I think that's what I'm most proud of, is the accolades. And then, of course, the fact that consumers really are enjoying our cigars across the world, buying our cigars across the world, and some of the fine ratings we've enjoyed.
So, Hemanth, what's your relationship with Rocky? How did that start? You're bringing effectively an Indian-sounding brand back to India. How did you guys meet? What got you two to be in the relationship in which you are now?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting journey. As much as he said, it's an accidental journey here as well for me. Started to smoke as a casual smoker, try to appreciate cigars. But then when I came back to India, trying to carry this experience, I couldn't find the right source to get cigars in India. So I did a little my research, and I found a big gap in this market. So the first approach was through my contact was an Indian who's a leader. So here he is, who supported me a lot. I think because of him, we are here trying to grow this market. I would say he's the cigar guru for me, trying to every day constantly, push the quality of cigars to the next level. And we are very happy to associate with his brand and showcase his brand to the Indian consumers.
How do you see the market for cigars? Is it shrinking as it becomes more niche, more luxury? Or are we seeing younger consumers coming in saying, you know what, a cigar is not what my grandfather smoked. It's something I'd like to do too.
The industry is growing, but what we've seen, I would say over the last 5 years, the new younger generation really enjoys premium cigars. They like craft beers, they like bourbons, they like whiskeys. When we went to college, we were drinking the cheapest stuff you could find, right? We didn't have that kind of money and disposable income. But the new generation really has that disposable income. They enjoy finer spirits, finer liquors, finer wines, beers, and certainly cigars. So we're seeing a movement, a grassroots movement towards that around the world. And so I think that it was pretty stable market at around 350 million units in the United States. And I think last year, we imported like almost 500 million units. So, and then COVID helped a lot. People were at home. They had the time and luxury to enjoy a cigar. And so more people kind of got into it. And I think the fact that we're out, really giving the tools and spending time with our consumers about the different blends and about the different flavor profiles and about the quality and the effort it takes to make this, artisan product. So all of that education that is being spread, that helps a lot.
What about here, Hemanth? Are we seeing that discerning consumer, or is it still, let me come in at the cheapest price point because I haven't smoked a cigar before, let me try one?
Initially, if somebody wants to try, they always want to see which is light on their pocket, to get the habitual of experiencing a cigar. But I think eventually they graduate, they want to try some new things in life and upgrading their palate experience. And that's where the big brands like Rocky is very important for this market, for consumers to experience new blends.
Now, one of the things that we're finding, and I know whiskeys, and increasingly you're changing the flavor profile to meet that new younger consumer. Are you finding having to do that with cigars as well? Different sizes, different blends, different flavor profiles to attract a new consumer generation?
So, when I start to make a blend or decide that I want to launch a particular brand, we don't really target audiences, and we don't say, okay, how do we really go after the younger generation? What do we do? I really work on trying to find unique tobaccos that deliver a character that is different. The taste is different. It's rich, it's complex, it's balanced, or it's creamy, it's mild. So we're always trying to be edgy and try to find something that's not conquered in the marketplace. So sometimes I'll make 140, 150 different blends, come down to 3, and then I'll play around with those 3 for 2 years. I'll play around with the primings on the filler, I'll play around with the binder, the wrapper. Sometimes it gets worse, sometimes it gets better. And then when you initially smoke the cigar, it tastes a certain way, then it changes after 3 months. So that my biggest joy is blending. I love blending cigars. That's the most fun, being down at the factories and working with all the different tobaccos. And for example, the cigar I'm smoking now, the 60, that cigar was aged for 2 years in a humidor in Esteli. We had to build a separate building just to store these for 2 years before we released them on the marketplace. And and I think it was noticed. I mean, it got, like Hemanth said, the number 2 cigar in the world from Cigar Aficionado. Last year on our Grand Reserve, we got the number 1 cigar from European Cigar Journal. So we've been getting the accolades, and so now I'm at a point in my life where I want to create landmark cigars and take the time. I mean, nobody wants to sit 8 cigars for 2 years. That's a lot of money in inventory to hold. But we're at that point as a company where we're capable of making landmark projects, and that's what's fun for me now.
$80 cigars, $100 cigars, and people are actually buying them. But at some point in time, that bubble's got to burst, right?
Absolutely. It's been interesting. One of the things I've noticed, especially my travels to Europe, people want expensive cigars. I was shocked. When we released the white label in the U.S., that released for around $20 to $22 a cigar. And I was a little nervous because most of my cigars sell around $12, $12.50 a cigar. And people are approaching me all the time asking for a $100 cigar, $50 cigar. In the UK, I was shocked. I walked into the humidors and we had dinner at a private club, and I looked and I said, let's have a cigar. So 3 of us walked in the humidor in this hotel, and we saw some Cubans. And I go, what do you recommend? He goes, that one. I go, well, how much? He says, $1,500. I said, $1,500 for the box? He said, no, for a cigar. I said, you're crazy. So people are paying crazy amounts for cigars. Now, that's not the norm in the U.S. market, but we've noticed a trend towards more of the higher luxury and pricing. So that's going to catch up in time. But the cost of making a cigar has gone up tremendously in the last 5-6 years. It just has. We can't make a cigar that we can have out at retail under $10 anymore.
Hemanth, how about India? We've had a history over here of growing tobacco that goes back centuries. We've had cigar manufacturers over here that go back over a century. Why hasn't India produced a quality cigar so far?
As a history, you're right. We used to grow some nice cigar tobaccos, and mostly in the east coast of India, starting from Calcutta down south to Tamil Nadu. But I think this was only as a history. Nobody really took into the world market, and it never showcased the international experience. So it's still today as a culture, it's very much domestic, what is grown in India, but it's not seen the real limelight of the international market. So I think that's something we want to work with Rocky, with his experience, to develop something in the Indian market for the Indian palate experience and to the world market with some Indian tobacco.
Do we have the right tobacco over here?
It takes time. We have the right soils. We have the right weather to grow. We are all in the same equator zone where some of the best tobaccos are grown. India produces some of the best tobaccos for different varieties. So I think we can grow some great cigar varieties.
I think Anish, that in growing tobacco for premium cigars is quite different than tobacco that you would use normally for cigarettes or anything else. So, for instance, the seed varietals are different. I agree with Hemanth that I think the climate is there. I think you have to grow the tobacco, specialize the technology and art and how you grow it and how you irrigate it. And then it comes into building curing barns. You literally have to have curing barns at the farm where you can then take that fresh tobacco and dry it and cure it. And then you have to have a place for fermentation. And we need to have skilled people here that are taught by people from Central America how to ferment it, because it's not a recipe that you can just write on paper. You got to be able to touch it, feel it, smell it. The construction, I'm pretty sure can be done. In fact, there were 8 women I saw rolling in Gujarat that were rolling cigars, and I saw the cigars and I tasted it, and they were quite craftily made. So I'm pretty confident that we have the labor force for the construction side of it.
You both talked about terroir, about the sun, the soil, the weather conditions that make India ideal. We used to say that about Cuba, right? We'd say the reason you have Bordeaux, the reason you have Burgundy, is because somewhere God kissed the soil and gave us the wines that we get. You used to say that about Cuba. Cuban cigars still are on a pedestal the world over.
Yeah.
What's your take? Cuban cigars, non-Cuban cigars, are they still the best?
So, there's no doubt that Cuban tobacco is unique, just like Nicaraguan, just like Honduran, just like Dominican, and many others, right? So, and there was a time and age when Cuban cigars were absolutely spectacular. And I think what's happened over time as the government has been more and more involved in limiting the power of the technicians and the old craftsmen and not allowing them to do what they need to do. For example, let's pretend that, Hemanth is running a factory in Cuba, you're working for the government, and I'm one of the growers of tobacco in Cuba. And now you come to me and I'm limited in the amount of fertilizer, I'm limited in how much I rotate the crop. You want me to produce X amount of pounds per hectare, and so now I'm forced to give tobacco to the factory that's not perfect and doesn't have the rich fertilization, is not as rich and pure. Then it goes over to him and he needs to cure and ferment the tobacco 4 years, and you come down on him and says, sorry, we need the money. You don't have 4 years, you have a year and a half. So he rushes the process. Then it goes to the factory, and at the factory, they want to make between two people, they want to make about 300 cigars a day, and you say, I want 600 cigars a day. So then the construction suffers. And so this is what's been happening for the last decade with Cuban cigars. They're made too fast. They don't spend the time to cure and age and ferment the tobacco. And now you have the Chinese that bought them, right? So if you go to any airport, I was in Heathrow, I was in Frankfurt, the shelves are empty. You go all over Europe, you can't find Cuban cigars. A couple of reasons. First, nobody's growing enough tobacco in Cuba because there's no incentive for them. They're growing other things. Second thing, they got hit with a couple of hurricanes. So they had issues with the quality and what happened with the tobacco. And then finally, most of the cigars are now going to China, and so nobody's getting them. But it's given people the opportunity to try the New World cigars. And they finally realized that the construction and quality of the New World cigars is much finer than the Cuban cigars. Now, as far as taste, it's a preference, but we're seeing, when I started, I got kicked out of probably 80% of the stores in Geneva, Switzerland, and all over because they're all stuck up, and unless it's Cuban, we're not interested. And then when I would take the band off and give it, and it took me several decades to get a foothold in the European market. And now, back then, it eventually went where it was like about 70% Cubans, 20% Davidoff, and 10% all other brands. Now it's gotten to the point where it's about 70% New World cigars, and the rest are Cubans and Davidoffs.
So where do you see the market going worldwide in India?
One of the challenges we face is we have a big demand now in the international market with the void of Cuban cigars. And it's hard for us to fill it. I mean, last year, we had a 5.5 million cigar back order that we could not fulfill just out of our Nicaraguan factory. So, unfortunately, cigars are not like a widget. You press a button and boom, it takes 5-6 years of planning to introduce a new blend, a new cigar. You have to have all the raw materials. You have to have the labor, which has been an issue, to have the rollers. So we're having a hard time fulfilling the demand in our international market. That's why we've been cautious to open up the Middle East market. We're slowly getting there. We've been focusing on Germany, Switzerland, England, Spain, France, Holland, Belgium, the traditional markets. Slowly we're working on the Far East, the Middle East, because we just cannot physically supply that market chain right now because the demand in the U.S. is growing on a consistent basis. And then now you have this just crazy void in the international markets with Cubans. And so all of us are struggling to make more cigars to fill it. So that's been the challenge.
How do you see the market in India growing?
It is growing. Again, COVID was probably a good time for cigar consumers. They have all the time during lockdown to experience cigars. And so we see it in a growing market. Yes, there are a lot of challenges in terms of taxation, places to smoke because of regulations, but a real cigar smoker will find a space to smoke a cigar.
You want to get new consumers in. You want to get people moving away from that. That's what my grandfather does, or that's what my father does with that single malt by his side and the dogs at his feet and the blues playing in the background. How do you get the kid who wants the hip hop and wants the trance and wants to be cool? What do you say to him or her and say, you know what, this is why you should be smoking a cigar and not vaping?
Well, that's why we built these lounges. So the lounges I built weren't like that dark wood, old leather chairs with the dog and the whiskey, and we made it so it's sexy and gorgeous and it's stunning. If you make it with character and you have music, and it doesn't have to be hip hop because I don't allow any hip hop in my lounges. It's just all classical remixes, fun, lively atmosphere, beautiful staff, great service, great knowledge. And the opportunity to have rare whiskeys and bourbons and everything else, and create a fun environment. You'll be surprised how many women show up and start experiencing cigars, and how many young people show up and start enjoying cigars.
So let me ask you guys one final question. Ideal dinner table. 4 guys, you're sitting with them, you're shooting the shit, but it's whiskey, cigars, brandy, port, whatever. But 4 guys with whom you would love to be sharing a cigar.
I would have to say Elon Musk. I would take somebody like Amitabh Bachchan. I would take maybe a Putin, just because you need one wild card in there, and then somebody very reasonable. And right now, I like Governor DeSantis, who might be our next president, and somebody along that line. Some world leader that is reasonable and edgy.
Perfect. Rocky, Hemanth, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.